So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. Our guest tonight is Esther. Esther has taken on numerous testing roles in her career and has gathered a lot of knowledge and experience across testing. I've had the absolute privilege of working with Esther when she was our testing coach last year, and I can definitely vouch for her knowledge. So I'm very, very grateful to have you. And very thankful that you're coming to share with us tonight. So the idea tonight is that she'll be here to demystify some of the concepts and roles and jargon around testing and provide some guidance for how to get into testing, which is the name of the show tonight. So a couple things to get started. So what I want to do is I would just want to cover testing in general, and then I'm going to look at the past, and then I'm going to look at the future. So that's a very broad overview. So Esther, we're going to start with sort of your current job. So you're currently a consultant, and you do work with different clients as opposed to just the same people day in, day out. What does your current role sort of involve in a summary? What's your day-to-day?
So I'm a consultant. We do have multiple clients. So at a meetup, we go onto client site in teams. So normally a team would be a number of engineers, some testing specialists, DevOps, maybe a PM, depending on what the client's needs are and what the project is. My day-to-day at the moment is actually controversially not client side. So I'm working on an internal project at the moment. Open sourcing all of our knowledge that we've collected from going around to client sites and solving these problems. And we're trying to basically open source solutions to get people started quicker. So I think most people, when you start a new project, or if you're even just doing something at home, you're like, where do I start? And oh my goodness, I just want a web app. I need to spin it up, but there is so much stuff. What tools do I choose? How do I put it together? 5 weeks later, you probably might have either taken something like a boilerplate app like Create React app, or you would have found something else on the internet. We are providing those tools to get you started quicker, essentially. So my day-to-day at the moment is working with a very small team of specialists. I'm the testing specialist. We've got a DevOps specialist, a front-end specialist, and a BA. And we are basically taking lots of client problems, distilling them down and thinking about how we can solve the tech problems, not their problems.
Okay, so what kind of problems related to testing do you notice when you come into new companies?
Don't judge me too much, people. My biggest, the biggest thing that I see is that people think that testing should be a dedicated resource, namely a person or a team. Traditionally, this makes sense if you go back into how software evolved. If you can imagine doing punch card coding, and it would take you maybe 2 weeks to think about like an algorithm that you want to put into punch cards, and then you wanted to make sure that that was correct before you ran it through an old school computer, that could take up to 24 hours that you might have to book like weeks in advance that you're sharing with lots of other companies. You want to make sure that's right. So you're probably going to give it to someone else or a team of other people to make sure that they're validating it. Nowadays, though, we're really blessed. Like right now, we are live streaming and talking to each other. We've come a long way. Testing's come a long way as well. Yeah. We can get fast feedback so quickly. There are so many tools now. You don't need to potentially rely on individuals to get that sense of confidence in what you're releasing. And I definitely see clients thinking they still need that old school approach, like all your requirements outlined, your testing strategy outlined. This is how we're going to demonstrate that we've got quality. We definitely need someone to be able to advocate for that and say, yes, this is a green light, we can go live. What ends up happening is you get a blocker to releasing.
Sure. Okay. So it's getting there, but it's not quite where it should be, sort of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So this leads really Yeah, no, well, that's why you're here, for your opinion. This leads very nicely on to my next question. Given that you've done testing for quite a while, how have you seen software testing change, or even not change, as you've mentioned?
I'm definitely seeing a lot more. Okay, so software testing definitely. So when I started my career, I don't know if anyone's aware of it, but ISTQB is like an international standard for basically testing and quality. You go into a room, you answer a subset of questions like what's the difference between verification and validation. At the end of it, you get a certificate, and then you go and become a tester. And that's how I started my career. And it was that certificate that gave companies confidence that this person knew what they were doing. They didn't necessarily have the practice or they understood what they were testing, but they had a certificate. And it's still a really relevant thing. It's just interesting how far we've come now. The difference is I'm seeing a lot more individuals take up testing or understanding what testing means from a different point of view. So developers understanding the importance of unit testing, TDD, not potentially relying on a tester in your team and how you'd go about that. So if you're working in a if you're working in a startup, you might have 2 developers, that's all you can afford. How are you going to actually make sure that what you're releasing is correct? And how can you continue to make changes safely?
Mm-hmm.
So now we've taken the shift to the other side. And I do see a lot more emphasis on it's becoming more of a T-shaped approach. And by what I mean of that is you'll still find people with that strong experience down in one specialization, which could be testing. But there's definitely a lot more knowledge across the board, and that goes with everyone working in software.
Okay, that's perfect. That actually answers my second question, because I see a lot of overlap between developers and user experience as well in testing. So I don't know if you see that as well. But given that they're this T-shaped, this idea of being T-shaped, do you think that you can still tell who the tester is in a team, or is it becoming just a lot more people who do software using tests or testing mechanisms?
Really depends on the team and how they structure themselves. Like, I'm a big advocate for every team determines how they want to work and the most effective way. I do see a lot of teams will have a quality or testing advocate. So it's that person holding everyone accountable. It doesn't necessarily have to be the tester. It could be someone that's really passionate about making sure that we're getting this out in the best possible light as possible. Let's do everything we can. Or that person that always asks the question, how are we going to test this before we even start developing? Or how do we actually know that this is doing the right thing? On your point of UX as well, is this actually going to solve our customers' needs? That's a form of testing. You should be testing right at the beginning.
Yeah.
If you take out like a piece of paper with like a quick wireframe mock-up and go present it to someone and say, hey, do you kind of understand what I'm getting here? That's testing. And that's before you've even touched code.
Okay. So I think we'll expand on that a bit later. But something I've always wondered myself is there a difference between quality assurance and testing?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think there is. And I would like to understand what other people think. I see testing as a subset of quality assurance.
Okay.
So quality is almost like a process and a practice in which you ensure that it's meeting all your needs and it's doing the right thing, that your users are happy, that you've got, little to no bugs maybe in production, that it's accessible. It encompasses so much, like quality code or quality products. Testing is more of the act of ensuring that based on what you know. So you could say, I know that my users are going to be using a Chrome browser. We're using a tool that might not be supported in Internet Explorer. How are we going to test between cross browsers? That's something that you know and something that you're going to act on.
Okay. So would you say there's a difference between the role, so someone who's called a QA and someone who's called a tester? Would they really have a difference?
Oh, that's a good question. So I've seen, actually that's another thing that I've seen over time, is that the roles and descriptions have changed. So at the beginning I was a tester, and I went into like a test, engineering test, like an SDAT, like depending on your, if you're using technology or automation or not. Then there's QA or quality advocates or quality coaches. I think the more time that goes on, the more abstracted it becomes. So yes and no. I think if you see job descriptions saying tester, you're probably more likely to be going into a position where you're going to be the sole person responsible for literally the code is going to be developed, it's going to be handed over. You're going to test it based on what you know.
Right.
Quality assurance could be more looking at it holistically and embedding it from the get-go rather than at the end.
Okay, so the use of titles there could actually even tell you a lot about how the company approaches testing.
100%.
Okay.
Job descriptions are very transparent these days. You can go on LinkedIn as well. And a really quick Google search of their key terms as well will tell you a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So if we move on to, as you say, some of the roles are going to be more about holistic and maybe even strategy, and then some of them are going to be about doing an actual testing. Just trying to think which question I should. So would you say, looking at these two different roles, because for me in testing there's a lot of process knowledge and then there's a lot of tooling knowledge involved. So do those two kinds of, or does this gradient of or this range of roles lie in different areas between process knowledge and tool knowledge?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So within testing, okay, I'm gonna focus on two things. One is, I guess, tooling as a process. So you could specialize in testing as like a security tester or performance tester, and you might have a subset of tools that you know inside and out that will get your job done. So it means that you could go to, say for instance, I'm at a client site and they need a whole lot of security testing. I could be like, right, this is what I've done in the past, this is the outcomes that you get, boom. In terms of process and tooling though, for day-to-day and normal kind of, I guess, like testing or anyone that's working in software, it's more important for me to understand the process, or not the process, but thinking about what you want to test and how you want to test it, and then choosing the tools that are right for the job. It's like, I guess, like painting a wall. You might be like, okay, so I know I need to paint this wall. It's going to be green. I have a range of tools at my disposal. I have a tiny little paintbrush. I have a roller. I have a spray gun. You might pick the one that's right for the job, maybe depending on the texture of the wall. You might try a little test patch first. Does it work? No. Okay, another tool. To me, tools are more interchangeable. But it also means that you spread yourself thin because you end up using lots of tools.
Yeah, okay. So what kinds of tools or technologies do you find yourself using these days?
A lot. For instance, at the moment I'm working predominantly on server-side React applications and client-side React applications. So a lot of the tools would be, I would build up my foundation first. So the tools that I'd start choosing would be, cool, what am I going to use for unit testing? What am I going to use for static analysis? What am I going to use for linting and formatting? What is my language that I'm using at the moment? So we're doing everything in TypeScript, with JavaScript. So, okay, what's the best tool out there? Jest. Awesome, we'll use that for unit testing. How could I ensure that my static analysis is good? Okay, can I look at Sonar Cloud? What am I going to do for linting? Cool, what is Airbnb doing these days? Okay, they've got their own libraries. We're going to use ESLint and we're going to build off that. And then I'd start working my way up. So thinking about integration or snapshot, your functional testing frameworks. It really depends on if you're doing something that's user-facing, or it could be an API, so it's a bit more abstracted. Yeah.
Really, really
so
broad.
many tools.
Yeah. Okay, that's all right. I think we'll get to a couple of specifics later.
The good thing about it, though, it seems daunting, but if you have a project, or if you have a language or something that you're doing, people out there have written about this and collated all the tools that you should be choosing from, and it's really easy to make an informed decision these days. And the worst cases is that you try something, it's not the right thing, and you try again.
Yeah.
Just don't invest heavily at once.
Okay, I suppose it's part of the job, right? Testing the tool. Yeah. And then I found as well with a testing role that it can vary from a development role in the sense that you interact a lot more with the user and you have quite a high understanding of the business and the products. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, definitely, actually. Yeah. I don't know if it's... Yes,
you can say no.
I think it's always an assumption, but it really depends on the team as well and how much everyone is embedded. To me, a sign of a good team is that everyone's really concentrating on what the problem is we're trying to solve and who we're trying to solve it for. So you should be developing something, you should always have in mind your end customer. If you don't have that in mind, you're probably going to build your assumptions into something and then have to go back and either rewrite it or it's going to be wrong. Maybe it's just because I've been through that process a lot of times and I've banged my head against a wall a few times, and it seems normal to try and ask those questions first. But yeah, I would say it shouldn't just be the tester or the quality person on the team. It should be everyone thinking about that.
Cool, thank you. So we've covered off quite a lot. The fact that testing can really be broad. Carefully read the job spec, try and gain some insights into how they write the spec, which will tell you how the company is approaching testing, if testing is team-wide or if it's going to fall on one person. So that's really useful information. And then my last question before we go into our quick fire game round is, has anyone made particular assumptions about you when you've come in and said, hi, I'm here to do your testing?
Yeah, so my normal icebreaker to make sure that I break down assumptions is that I'm like, hi, my name is Esther and I'm a tester. So literally my name rhymes with my job description, and I don't even identify really as a tester myself. But that sort of breaks the ice and the barriers a bit. Definitely the assumptions are that I will be handed stuff. I will then tell them exactly what's wrong with it, like all the bugs, and then it will go, someone will have to magically go away and fix it, and then it will come back and I'll be like, cool, yes or no, we can go to production. Definitely not how I operate. I am most likely, for instance, in one of my last projects, it was, okay, cool, let's start at the beginning. What are the highest risk areas? I am going to pair with these developers and we are going to sort out making sure that our code is the best possible quality, because this is the most likely area that things are going to go wrong. And then it's having to try and say why I'm doing that and providing evidence of that is the best approach. It's all about that feedback. I would rather know at the development stage if there's going to be a potential issue than when it's in production or just before production and then having to go back to development.
Sure.
I've worked in projects where that was the case, where we had an offshore development team. Working waterfall, this is back in the day. We had a team of testers, an offshore development team. We didn't really know the developers.
Sure.
And what would happen is they would develop code, ship it to us. We would test it, sometimes through the weekend, find all the issues, log all the issues, send it back. That happened for 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like fun.
It was actually a really fun project, but now that I look back at it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I would have done things so much differently. But
yeah,
that was what was kind of standard and normal then.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've gathered that it's changing, but it could still be like that in certain places. So good to know. Okay, so quickfire game round. We need some.
Oh gosh.
There you go.
Here we go. Hashtag LOC get into at Ladies of Code LDN.
Okay, cool. All right, Esther. Whatever comes to mind first. Okay. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
A country you would love to visit if we went in lockdown?
Turkey.
Your favorite meetup?
Ladies of Code.
You can stay. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh, both?
In between.
In between, yeah.
Okay. You must sleep at some point. Marmite, do you love it or hate it?
Oh, this is a weird one because I'm from New Zealand and Marmite is different.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know how to answer this.
Your childhood Marmite.
I'm gonna go with love it, sanitarium Marmite from New Zealand. Okay. Try it.
Very specific. What is your favorite app?
Oh, Pocket.
Okay, yeah, good. Coding is a hobby, yes or no?
Yes.
Cool. Boyzone or Westlife?
Oh, Boyzone.
Boyzone. Cool. HP Quality Center or Selenium?
Oh, neither. Why would you even ask that? The 2 years that I spent. Okay, if I have to choose one, it would be Selenium. But the 2 years that I spent writing out bug reports was an HP QC, and my goodness, I never want to see it ever again.
Yes. So the lesson here is, if you see HP QC on a job description, you leave. Okay, you run away screaming, throw it in the fire. Alrighty, tabs or spaces?
Tabs.
Apple or BlackBerry?
Apple.
BlackBerry or Raspberry Pi?
Raspberry Pi.
North London or South London?
South London!
Woo! Represent.
Yay!
And a product that you wish existed?
Okay. There is actually a product out there that could be better, but okay. A product that I wish existed and something that I've always wanted to do in my spare time. I have lots of recipe books. I would like them to be indexed in a way that I can search for recipes on my phone based on ingredients or method or anything, just like you type into Google. But then so I can go and get my recipe book and open it up to that page and then start using the recipe. If anyone fancies doing that.
Sounds useful. And then before we get in, we have a lean coffee on Sunday where we'll be talking about user testing in UX. So if you'd like to join, please email your email. Please email Latest Code and we will send you a Slack account because you need to be on our Slack to participate. Cool. Alrighty. Thanks, Esther. So the next part we're going to talk about is a bit more about the background, your background in testing. So why testing, and what do you enjoy about testing?
Why testing? My name rhymes with it. No.
So that was easy one for you.
No, I did engineering at university actually, and majored in continuing mechanics. But as part of that, I used a lot of I did a lot of basic programming and like MATLAB and C and R. I think Python had just sort of started coming onto the scene then as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed it actually, but I didn't know what to get into when I left university. I think everyone went through this.
Sure.
And for some reason at a university fair, there were a whole lot of software agencies, and one of them was a consultancy in testing. And the thing that appealed to me actually wasn't the testing, it was that you get to work in software, and that it was a consultancy, because I had just spent 4 years being a hermit and not really knowing how to socially interact and being very shy. And I thought it'd be a really good chance to actually get out of my comfort zone and learn all those soft skills. So I just fell into testing.
Okay, that's all right. But that is a good point. I think there's a lot of human interaction in testing, as long as you're in the right kind of role. Maybe modern testing, not so much the previous testing where you spoke about them throwing stuff over the wall.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It literally, like, I've seen places where you have a subset of people that are like shielded from everyone else, and they can't even talk to anyone or interact.
Yeah.
It's like isolation, but at work.
Yeah, it can be quite lonely as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely trying to avoid those positions. What kinds of other backgrounds have you seen that other people that have come into testing have had?
I've seen a lot of people switch. So a lot of people have maybe they've gone to boot camps, or they've done a computer science degree, and they've gone into development and realized they didn't really like it, or they met someone that was in testing, or they found something, or they were that quality advocate as part of their team, and they actually went into it more. So they sort of upskilled themselves and became more aligned to testing. I see a lot of people that have come from sort of like SME type roles, like subject matter expert roles.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they might have been a subject matter at their workplace, and then they might have been handed a software role because they were the ones that were best able to test. And then they start thinking, oh, is there an easier way than manually verifying again and again? And they get more embedded in it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, how do I put this? It's a really good way to get into software. I'm not going to say it's like a low bar to entry, but it is just a really awesome way. I've met so many people that have gone into software through testing and then have upskilled more and then gone into other specializations. It's a really cool entry path, and rather than being, I think a lot of people expect that they need to know everything at once. This is a way to be able to learn on the job, and learn the things that go wrong and then how to prevent them. So it actually makes you it upskills you as you go along.
Okay, that's a really good point. There is something about testing where because it's so broad, it's not like development where you have to learn to code and then you can do it. You can actually start in testing and learn as you go.
Completely.
So that's great.
There's so much manual testing still as well, and I'd like to say HPQC still holds its place, Selenium still holds its place, and there are so many different types of software projects that are going on. If you think about projects, you still need a lot of old school regiment requirements up front. Is it going to work? Traffic control systems, all of that kind of human factorness.
Yeah.
Rockets going to space.
That's true. I think with any piece of software, you eventually need a human to look at it. As much as you can automate testing, someone still has to look at something and say, why, does this really work for a person?
Well, there is artificial intelligence that's doing automation on the fly. And there's lots of clever things that even your IDE will do, like while you're coding. But automation is a human looking at it at the end of the day. Someone has to write the code.
Yeah. So do you think it's worth talking a little about exploratory testing versus automated tests?
Ooh, yeah. I don't think it's a versus.
Together. That's true. It's one together.
I see. So automation is just something. So you take something that you're repeating again and again, and you automate it. Or you think that actually this is a really hard thing to test, and if we have to test this again, oh my goodness, I'm probably not going to be bothered, and then I'm just going to forget about it. You automate that kind of stuff. Whereas exploratory, that's something that's constant. Like you were talking about UX design, and if you think back to like putting a wireframe together and then taking it to people, that's a form of exploratory testing. Exploratory testing is looking at your app in production at 2 a.m. because you're bored and just clicking around as well. It can be anyone, anything, doing anything to interact with what you're developing. Exploratory sessions are really good as well. So you could actually dedicate some time, think about what your outcomes are or what you're actually going to focus on, and like write down what you're finding. But most of the time it's not a versus, it's you should always be exploratory testing and your whole team should be. Automation is just something that helps you get more stuff done.
100%. So talking about people coming into testing from various backgrounds, would you advise on different paths of entry for people who don't code and people who can currently code?
Yeah, I don't know, because it's quite hard. Coding is it depends on where you want to focus on, really. Where's an entry? Okay, yeah, probably. Okay, so if you can code, start with your unit tests. So go with whatever you're doing right now and whatever you're coding, whatever shape or form, doesn't matter if you're looking at front end or back end or you're doing some serverless functions. Think about how you can test that and what tools you're going to use to test that. Look at different, there's actually some really cool resources. So Go is a Google language. They've got a whole course on it, but they teach Go through test. So you learn how to test it first and then how to develop using it. I think that's a really cool approach.
Okay.
If you're a non-programmatic person, don't get focused on trying to think that you need to know how to code and use that as an excuse or as a barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Start with your skills. So what are you really good at? It could be that you're fantastic at thinking about the end product and how to optimize that. So maybe you're doing an e-commerce site. How are you going to make sure that your customers are going to see the most relevant products first, and are they the right products? Or are you thinking about accessibility? Like, how can you ensure that someone that might have color blindness can actually see your screen the same way as other people and determine where to click? Use your skills and then work backwards. And then once you hit that point where you're like, oh, is there a way that I could actually automate this instead of doing it again and again? Or if there's a way to do it programmatically, go and ask those questions, ask the people, go on Google, Google's your friend, and then start learning to solve that problem.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's an excellent answer, because I think it's not always clear how you can bring what you already do into testing, but you probably can. A lot of people in a company are looking at the use of a product. You know, everyone from sales to marketing to BI that I'm aware of in my own company are all looking at use of product.
Completely. You actually couldn't put it better. Like, okay, so if a form of testing is people in production, right, and actually using the product and getting feedback on it.
Yeah.
So a very simple way is to literally, you know, when you're using something or a tool and it crashes, or like say you're using an app and it crashes on you, and you're like, oh my goodness, I was in the middle of something, it lost everything. Take 2 minutes, submit a report or write a bug summary and send it back to the developers. They will love you. They will read it. Trust me, people read these things. And that's a form of testing.
Mm-hmm.
You just get into the practice of
Exactly.
that. And that's a skill.
100%. So probably related to this is if I've got no experience in testing at all, if I was trying to get into development, I would build a portfolio of things I can code. What would be something I could build up to show people that I could be a tester in their company or QA?
Yeah. What's something you can build up? Okay, so I said at the beginning, testing strategies.
Mm-hmm.
If you can build up, not like a document per se, but if you can build up an approach to how you would go in to a potential project or a team and think about how you would test, that's really beneficial. It doesn't need to be tool specific, but definitely what the process might be.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be demonstrable examples of that. So if you're getting going, depending on where you are, you might have an example of I was doing some functional end-to-end testing, and to do this, I worked with the team and we introduced Cypress. We were doing a front-end app in JavaScript. I thought this was the best idea because then as a team we're all in the same repo, we were writing in the same language, and we weren't leaving everything to the end for me to go over and try to figure it out what to do. I think it's more the experience and how you would approach things rather than you don't need to build a website and show a website.
Okay.
Yeah. It's actually a really hard question. I haven't thought about that, and now I'm trying to think about if I need to build something myself.
Yeah, well, it relates again to the broadness of this kind of thing. So, and you've made some really good points, which is if you've got a coding background, you could expand into, you know, testing tools and automated tooling, and that is something that you can put in a portfolio as a developer would put production level code.
Yeah.
And then, but if you don't have that kind of background, you can bring your experience from your current career and see how you would approach testing using what you already know, and you could literally write that in a document or a blog and showcase that.
I've written a couple of blogs, or even a few things. Like you go open source as well. Like if you've done something, or if you've done, if you are coding, or if you're doing an automation framework, like try and extract all of that away, or do a sample of it and push it to Git. People will be able to see that, and it's a really quick way of showing what you can do. And it's a great way to contribute back. I love your idea about blogs. That's definitely a huge tick. Also because testing and quality tends to be more something that the business is, when I say the business, Esther, is more what maybe the company might, they might want to read something that is a bit more understandable rather than thinking of it as in a coding point of view.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me just check my notes here. All right, so we're going to do a quick fire round 2. Okay. Whatever comes to mind first. So we've got Mac or PC?
Mac.
Your favorite country that you've been to so far?
India.
Okay, nice. Sequel or no sequel?
No sequel.
Matcha chai or Jest enzyme?
That's
Whatever comes to mind first.
well, just is on mocha.
It means nothing to me. I'm sorry. You're on your own.
Unit testing, and it depends on the runner. And I'm going to say mocha chai. That encompasses more things.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Mouse or trackpad?
Oh, I've just switched to a mouse since being in lockdown for the first time in years. I'm loving life.
Cool. I'm glad to hear it. My mouse has been lying here dead for weeks. So.
Oh no!
I don't know why.
Resuscitate it.
I should. Burrito or pizza?
Pizza.
Cupcake or donut?
Cupcake.
Froyo or ice cream sandwich?
Oh, froyo, maybe. What? Froyo doesn't really exist here. I haven't really had one. I'm gonna say froyo. Why not?
I don't even know what
YOLO.
it is. It's terrible.
Froyo. It's a frozen yogurt thing. You know, you go into those places and you put all the
right. Okay. Sounds
and then
good.
you end up paying like £5 million for it, and you're like, "How? I got this one."
Sounds like London. Your text editor of choice?
Oh, my current IDE. I've actually just recently switched to VS Code. And I've got all the extensions.
Okay. Sounds good. Very popular these days. West London or East London?
East.
Okay, cool. Good. In an alternate universe, what would your job be?
Oh, in an alternate universe, what would my job be? I'd be I don't know what you call it, but like an innovation chef. So someone that comes up with recipes.
Cool. Sounds awesome.
That would be fun. Yeah.
I would be a tester in that case because I like to eat.
Well, you gotta test what you're like actually baking, right?
I'm in. You just let me know. And what is some of the best advice you've been given in your career?
Fake it till you make it. I know that sounds really, really lame. But if you can go into something, like even tonight, like I'm answering some of these questions terribly, but I'm trying to fake confidence because it actually just makes a big difference. If you can go into a situation and you can hold your own, you can speak with confidence, doesn't really matter 99% of what you're saying, it's your body mannerisms and your overall impression that other people are going to take from it. So even if you just say one thing right and 10 things wrong, they're probably going to remember the one thing that was right. Especially handy if you're going into testing as well. If you can go into a situation and with confidence say, hey, there's something that's probably going to go wrong here or is wrong, they're going to then listen to you rather than maybe not. So yeah, faking it till you make it.
Cool. Sounds good.
Also, I do that constantly. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's because so much of it is in your own head. So if you actually, you're saying, the questions you're not sure, but you're doing fine. And it's super useful. You've been doing it for ages, and sometimes that's part of it is it's difficult to look at yourself and evaluate yourself. So I think that's great advice because you will fail a couple times and then you'll get it. You shouldn't be afraid to try something. And even if you know that you don't know all the things, you can learn those things. You know, humans are highly capable of learning. I don't know why we don't think this is a thing, especially in software. It's highly annoying. No, I think that's great. Yeah, especially just to reset your own mind.
It's such a good point, actually. So, like, you're never going to know everything from the get-go. And you're right, I spend most of my time just learning.
Yeah.
So you pick up on all the patterns and the processes with testing, and then you learn how to solve them. That's pretty much what I do day to day. Like, yesterday, I spent the day going through, I kid you not, 300 ESLint failures and some code. Not because the programmer was bad. It was because they were more akin to Python rather than TypeScript.
Yeah.
And so all the linting standards are completely switched.
Okay.
So I don't know. Where am I going with this? I learned a whole lot about how to lint and swap over things in TypeScript and what good and bad looks like.
Yeah.
On the fly.
Exactly.
Error by error.
And I think in this role, it's especially important to have that kind of attitude because it's literally ingrained in the job. You know, you need to figure it out, and you need to just be happy that you can figure it out.
If you tell someone, hey, I need 5 minutes to go and actually research that, or that's a really good question, let me come back to you on something. That's so much better than thinking, oh God, I don't know, I'm going to try and make something up and panicking.
Yeah, no, 100%. Cool, thank you so much. A couple of questions around your current consulting role. How do you, given that you move onto projects and you are expected to sort of very rapidly start delivering, how do you become productive really fast? And how relevant to how much product and project knowledge do you need before you can actually start writing good tests?
So writing good tests in terms of programmatically, as soon as you're writing your code, before you write your code, you start thinking about your tests. So that's like something that just comes fast. That doesn't happen though, like, let's face it, it's a whimsical world. But it's definitely something, it's one of the first questions that you can ask as well. So if you were to go, so if I was to start a team and say they were using Python, probably one of my first questions would be like, what testing framework should we be using for unit tests? You know, should we be using PyTest? Why is that the right decision? In terms of getting going quicker and getting, I find out all the problems, I think about the risk areas, and then think about how I'm going to align myself to those. I tend to gravitate to where the problems might lie, and if there's no problem there, then I'll shift my attention. If that makes sense. So if I was to go into a project and it had a key component which like a centralized system that was handling checkout, that business might not be able to operate or get revenue unless that checkout was working. So potentially I might want to learn more about what that checkout is going to be doing and then try and focus my efforts there. Okay,
so if I summarize, would you say that your strategy has been get in there, try and understand the problems broadly, prioritize, find the most important one, and then focus in on that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool.
In practice, I tend to just try look at everything too much, but that's ideally what I'd like to do.
Well, you sound like a tester. I don't know if you saw, but on Twitter there was a tweet about, I think, a birthday. So you're an individual and you have a sister and they're 2 years younger than you and you're 44 now. How old is the sister? And the developer said, well, you know, it's 44 minus 2, so it's 42. And the tester wrote this whole thing about, well, actually, they could be between 41 and 43 because you didn't specify the date. And you haven't given us any background about the actual relationship. You don't know if they're still alive, if they've moved away, if they were adopted, if they live on another planet. There's this whole thing. And it hit the nail on the head for me, because I find that people who are inclined to be testers are they think about the whole problem somehow magically, in a way that people who are solution people who just want to hear a problem and give you a solution, which is like me. Oh, I'm sorry, you said you need, this feature is not working, I can build that. I don't even ask questions, but the tester will sit back and go, hang on. I need more information here.
That's such a good point, actually. Yeah, so definitely I ask lots of questions. And actually, that's one of my biggest advice to anyone: go in and ask all those questions, and ask the stupidest questions first as well, because they are probably the most relevant. So like ask, oh, when is the birthday? That could be the first question that you would ask in that, right? Or maybe, who cares? Like, that's sometimes also a question. Is it relevant? But yes, definitely. My biggest issue though these days is that I'm also a solutions person. So I come up with lots of problems and then I want to solve it all.
Oh, careful. Fine line.
Yeah, it's bad. It leads to unproductivity.
So this is a very interesting point, actually, because it's something that I find TDD tries to address. When you're working on a test and you're thinking about testing, you should try and live in the problem space where you're not trying to solve a problem, you're trying to understand the problem and get the specs of that. And then when you're writing the test, you think about, a piece of the problem. You don't actually think, you have to try really hard. This is really, really, really hard for a developer to disconnect the two. But you should try and train your mind to focus on the problem. And then you have to switch when you're writing the code that is going to make the test pass. And then you have to switch to being a solution person.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me too much to hear you say, you're having to go between, because part of some of the more modern practices are about developing those two perspectives.
It's almost like the two sides of your brain. I totally get it. Like, I found myself writing my test first and then realizing that I've solved I've solved the problem in the test.
Okay.
And then I have to backwards engineer it out. I'm like, what are you doing now?
I actually do that quite often. Bad. Yeah.
A really good tip that someone actually taught me is write out your intentions first in pseudocode, just in comments. That's the easiest way to start testing as well. And then start writing your tests and then start writing your code.
Yeah.
And then it keeps you honest about what you're first thinking about as well.
True, 100%. I have seen some companies where if they're trying to move from a more traditional way of working to a more modern way of working where people are more T-shaped cross-functional, they will get the tester to write the unit test and they will get the developer to write the code. And then they start changing this up and the two start to merge. It's an interesting thing to try.
I mean, I would actually be really interested in that, but I'm guessing from that, naturally what would come out is they'd have to pair together.
Yes, exactly. At some point.
Or at least ask lots of questions.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's the idea. Cool. Thank you so much. So Esther does have an enormous amount of resources, and she is very, very kindly going to provide those to us, and we will tweet them out for you. So there's no need to write them down or anything like that. Just follow our Ladies of Code banner, which says we'll put up. There you go.
And please do ask. I don't know if all the questions were answered, but I'm much better at asynchronously responding to questions if I get a chance to think about them as well. So if you do have something in particular or definitely a problem that you're trying to solve at the moment, do ask and I'll do my best to try and help. I definitely work much better in the moment then trying to think about how to abstract that away and talk in a way that people understand me.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, thank you so much, Esther. Yeah, you can find Esther's Twitter handle linked to ours, and I'm sure Suze can pop them up. I didn't ask her before, so.
Yeah.
I can pop them up.
It's Esther the Tester.
Esther the Tester on Twitter. So please give her a follow. And then last question, in terms of the future. So where do you see, we've spoken a lot about where testing has come from. We spoke about old school throwing over the wall, and there is some of that, and we've spoken about how broad testing is and how you can come at it from coding, non-coding, and different ways of doing that. Where do you see the future of software quality or software testing going, and where is it going to be in the future?
Okay, so software goes, it's rapid fire. I'm going to say at least in the next 5 years, we're going to see a move to a lot more cross-functional teams, but that doesn't mean that you need to know everything as a cross-functional individual, because the tools and the processes will just become second nature. So it's like no one needs to know binary anymore, right?
Sure.
So everything becomes a lot easier and accessible. I think we'll also see a lot more of a move towards sort of smart QA, like machine learning or AI, to basically pattern match code. Like if you think about GitHub as a complete like a resource of data, you could feed that into some clever algorithms to think about where problems might lie and try and prevent them at the beginning. Yeah, I personally hope to see that more teams adopt more of a quality mindset, and at least someone champions it as well and asks the question, how are we going to test this, or is it doing what we should be doing?
I've muted myself. Thank you so much, Esther. Really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And we look forward to seeing you at another Ladies of Code event. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.